for want of a better phrase, they were cannon fodder for someone's political ideology.
Howling, slabbering, just with a beeline to get to me, pounced on me, pinned me to the floor and started ripping me to bits to kill me. It just came to me that I just felt that we were just being put on the ground as bait so that we would get attacked, and then they would be able to follow up and build the bigger intelligence picture, which sent me on a path of destruction and mayhem. I look back now and the question I ask, which I think is very relevant, is would I have joined the military if it wasn't for that attack?
I would say we're not in Iraq for weapons of mass destruction. This is about oil, this is money. They don't really care about collateral damage, how many lives we lose, contracts for big oil companies. We're back, Series 2, thanks to our sponsor, Shafrazul, who's also fighting entrepreneurs and fake gurus. Go check his channel on YouTube. On today's episode of the podcast, I've got Ollie Ollerton, author, business owner, ex-SBS and DS on Channel 4's Who Dares Wins. So first things first, Ollie, I called you ex-SBS. I noticed that everyone seems to call you ex-SAS.
Mate, I'm so proud of you. That's a good start. It's a really good start. Ex-SBS. I mean, that's what I'd like to hear all the time. When we first actually came up with the show, this is sort of a roundabout answer to your question. We came up with the concept of the show. We put it all together. The last thing we wanted it to be called was SAS Who Dares Wins, really, because we're not SAS. We've done SAS selection, but then we chose to go. Not all of us. Billy's like SAS. But me, Foxy and Ant are all former SBS. So we've done SAS selection, but then we chose to go into the SBS.
There's banter between the two, isn't there? Like, you guys are better than the SAS guys, aren't you?
I'm not Don't put me on point there. Billy will go nuts.
I've talked to actual SAS people. I mean, they've told me what it stands for.
What does it stand for?
Super Army Soldiers.
But I think I always say, look, we've got two different disciplines, and they can't. We do something a little bit different, which they can't do, and they've got skills that we're not so great, as good at. So there is a difference between the two, but there's banter. It's like take it back a level. Look at the Royal Marines and look at the Paras. There's banter there. You know what I mean? It's a healthy rivalry. That healthy rivalry really is flaring up when there's no wars on. When there's wars and you're relying on each other to say, depending on each other, you're putting your trust of your lives into each other. That stuff goes out the window.
My dad's actually he was in Night Truck for Orlando. They were a cavalry regiment, but they used to have banter with the infantry.
Yeah, it's just the way it is. It's always that way. We're better than you, and you're better than us, and blah blah blah.
So I grew up on army bases. So you weren't from a military background anyway. There was no military in your family, was there?
My grandfather was military, so he was a captain in the Royal Engineers.
Oh yeah, Remy.
Yeah, in the Remy. So there was that, but there's not a great deal. I mean, my brother joined the military after me, and he became a pilot. So in the Royal Navy, so he was a helicopter pilot. So apart from that, it's like. But I felt this at 14 years old. I felt this calling, and it was to be part of the military and the Royal Marines. So which is so
you'd not had that before earlier in your childhood.
No, I don't think so. It's just I started buying it. There was a magazine called Combat and Survival, and I was a very outdoorsy kid anyway. As a family, we were massively outdoors. All of a sudden, I just fell in love with that whole life. I had a passion for it. The strongest passion I think I've ever had for anything.
Really?
Yeah. It was, and I was that was me. I was dead set on joining the Royal Marines, and there was nothing else. There was no B plan because the A plan was going to work.
So were you like that as a child anyway? Were you focused on the task at hand as a child, or what were you like growing up?
I was an absolute fucking nightmare. Yeah, no, I got in a lot of trouble. I talk about it a lot, but because it was the start, the end, and the middle. But I got attacked by a chimpanzee when I was 10 years old at the circus, which sent me on a path of destruction and mayhem. And I look back now, and the question I ask, which I think is very relevant, is would I have joined the military if it wasn't for that attack? I don't know, but would I have gone to the extremes I did and got to the special forces? That chimp attack really did change the dynamic of who I was and set me on a different path.
When I read the book, that seemed to me as the reader, that was like the catalyst for everything that happened afterwards. Looking back, would you say that was the one event?
Yeah, 100%. 100%, because and it takes years of looking back, years of hindsight to understand that a very traumatic event like that at 10 years old is going to have a majorly massive impact on your life. To think I could lock that away and forget about it was naive.
Yeah. So is that how you tried to handle it at the time?
No, because when we have these traumas and when things happen to us, we naturally try and close off that emotion. We try and close off, that specific trauma. We just compartmentalize it, lock it away, and think we can forget about it. And it doesn't. I know now it doesn't work like that. Hindsight never won any wars, but looking back, I've been able to reflect on how influential that was throughout my whole life, and I've only just dealt with that trauma.
Yeah.
Last year.
Do you mind talking about what happens? Because it sounds unusual that someone from living in England would be attacked by a chimpanzee. How did that happen?
Yeah. Well, it was to do with the circus. The circus was setting up in Burton-on-Trent in Staffordshire. We stumbled across it on our way to the swimming baths, having a look around. Asked the guys if we could look around. There was no specific health and safety back then in 1980, so it was like, yeah, just help yourselves. And I sort of got separated. I went through the big top, was drawn to this opening, and on the other side of there in this open expanse was a chimp. And the chimp was sat there. And for me, seeing a chimp, that was like Hollywood. I was in love with Tarzan. I was in love with Cheetah. And I probably just watched a series that day. It was the summer holidays, an episode that day on TV. And I walked down there and I saw this chimp. And I was like, well, that was amazing. I was compelled, went towards it. It started interacting with me, giving me food. And I was like, I can't break this moment, but I'm not eating that food. So I was throwing it over my shoulder, and this moment was heaven. It was brilliant. And then that serenity of that moment was broken like a fighter jet cutting through the sky as I heard this roar, and in the background there was Mummy, and Mummy came on at Mach 10 towards me, howling, slavering, just an absolute, with a beeline to get to me to kill me. Pounced on me, pinned me to the floor, and started ripping me to bits. And that is the catalyst. When I look back, that's the catalyst for everything. My company called Breakpoint. The name Breakpoint comes from that moment I was laid under the chimp, and I knew I was going to die. And I knew I had to do something, and I could have laid there and just allowed whatever to happen and hope for the best. But I knew that any chance of survival meant that I had to up my game. I had to retaliate. But I knew by doing so that would anger the chimp even further. It'd take it to the next level. But that's what I did. And if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be here today. So basically, I had to push myself into the short-term discomfort for long-term gain that they was living. And that's the whole ethos behind Breakpoint.
So would you actually say that was the first conscious Breakpoint decision you made in your life?
100%. And I've had a fair few events, major events, but the whole ethos and theory behind Breakpoint isn't about going to the circus and getting attacked. It's about taking care of the small stuff. It's about everything we want to achieve in life. You have to have the mindset that you've got to push through the hardship to get to the glory days. You have to push through the short-term discomfort for any long-term benefit.
So explain to someone watching this then. So what necessarily is Breakpoint? So what would be the process that you would follow to say, this is how I cope with this situation? Because it's almost surreal to think you're being pinned down by a chimp, being attacked. So what was your thought process, and what is the Breakpoint?
Yeah, I think going back to that, I don't think I know. Going back to that moment, that was instinctive. That was the fight in me that was coming through. It wasn't a thought process I went through. That's just something I retaliated, because I was pushed into a corner. It's fight or flight, and I had to fight. I had no choice. So really, and then that whole concept, the concept of that attack, which was basically me taking it up to the next notch. And that was short-term discomfort for long-term gain. Long-term gain, like I said, was living. Now, I relate that to every aspect. Whenever we want to achieve anything in life, we all know that we're wired to A, be negative. We're wired B, to take shortcuts. And we want the end result, but we don't want the hard work. I always use as an analogy fitness, right? If someone wants to, hasn't run before, they want to, next year they're going to do the London Marathon.
Yeah.
They know that they've got to do that. They've got to do some level of training. Now, whenever it comes to doing that training, the honeymoon period is focused on doing the event. But when it actually comes to execute the plan, your brain starts going into overdrive with all kind of negativity and thoughts about why you shouldn't do it. And that's what my book Battle Ready really focuses on as one of the major components, is understanding how this all works.
Yeah.
Because you've got to understand that, when you don't feel motivated, when you feel negative, that's not just you. I spent a lot of my life thinking I'm cursed with this, negative sort of affliction. But it's not. It's just we're wired that way because we're trained to avoid discomfort, avoid stress at any costs. So anytime it comes to doing anything new, the alarm bells flare up. Our mind is so devious. It's like in the morning when I go, it's like exactly every day I face this, and that's why my book's called Battle Ready. It's like this morning, I've got my set routine, my morning routine, and it comes to doing, like leaving my nice warm house and going on a run or going into the gym. And straight away, my head goes, go and check your email, turn your phone on, do this, do that. All these kind of clever distractions, because as soon as I open that phone or as soon as I switch on my email, there's something that will harness my attention. There's something that will distract me to say, oh, I need to deal with this. And it takes me away from the discomfort. I don't allow that to happen, but it's not to say that I don't go through that negative. I can find a million excuses not to go on that run, not to go into that discomfort of doing the hill climb. There's a million reasons, and you can choose to align with that. But if you want to develop, I want to be a better version of myself every day. I want to make sure that I'm healthy and fit because I want to live a happier and longer life. That's a massive selling point to me. So I know by doing that, taking that short-term discomfort every day is adding to the overwhelming, or sort of the general picture of my mental happiness and my physical ability. So really, and taking it back, just the way we're wired, whether that's doing the dishes, whether it's, squaring away your emails, whether it's paying your bills, that is what Breakpoint's all about. It's about pushing through, making sure everything's squared away. The worst thing I hate is I come down in the morning, it doesn't happen. But the worst thing, if it ever did happen, it has happened in the past, coming down and there's dishes all over that from the night before, and then you've got to deal with that. It's the simple stuff. It really is the simple stuff. Taking care of that stuff, you just want to get to bed. I'll leave that till tomorrow. If you get into that life cycle, it it affects your life massively in all different aspects. So really, it's about taking care of the small stuff, and then the big stuff all comes into play. It's about changing the way you think about things. I know I walk downstairs, that kitchen's squared away and it's absolutely pristine. Well, to a degree, it sets me off it puts me on a good footing for that day. If I then come back and my bed's been made again, there's nothing worse than going back to a bed that you've just rolled out of and there's just a mess everywhere.
Yeah.
If when I've had some really tough times in life, the one thing that I've always made sure is squared away is my immediate surroundings. When everything's a mess around you, that's because your head's a mess.
Yeah. My dad was an RSM. He went through the ranks and became an RSM, and then he got commissioned captain major. The first thing we were told to do is make our bed as soon as we got out of bed. Like, we were like squaddies at home, me, my brother and my sister. And the same thing as well, if we had a house party, we clear the party away before we go to bed. Like, so you wake up in the morning as if the party never happened. So it's interesting that you say that. So why the military and why the Marines specifically?
First of all, the military really came from the fact, after that chimp attack, I did get in a lot of trouble with the police. And I spent a couple of weeks in a remand home. I came very close to a custodial sentence at 14 years old. And at that point, which I'll never be able to thank my mum enough for, you know, my father had left. My mum was in emotional, financial, absolute pressure. And at that point, she could see that I needed guidance. I needed to be my energy focused in a certain direction. She picked me up from that and gave me the direction, gave me the focus. And I was heavily sort of focused. My fitness has always been a major part of my life. You know, cross country running, 1,500 meters, all that kind of stuff. And my mum focused me on that. You know, she used to take me to run. I used to run for the county. She used to take me to events at the weekends. If I wasn't doing that, then at that point, you know, at 14, I was like, just this calling to go to the military. It just seemed like the perfect fit. It didn't seem like anything else in the world fit apart from that. And if I hadn't have got in, I'd have been absolutely devastated. But I wasn't thinking like that anyway. So then at 14, I made that decision. And then, you know, my mum was heavily invested in. She could see the passion that I had for that. I don't know why I wanted to join the military. I've got a theory on it, and that is basically because from that chimp attack, I was an extremist. I was chasing danger. I was chasing death everywhere. And the military just seemed like I wanted to be in war.
Yeah. Well, it was kicking off a lot then, wasn't it? You had Northern Ireland, you had Yugoslavia, former Yugoslavia was splitting up and stuff like that. So you definitely would have saw action around that time.
Yeah, so, I did. But it wasn't, it's still, you know, I talk about this a lot though. I still join, you know, we chase this material sort of image because we think that's going to satisfy us. Like I changed the image. I chased the image of being a soldier. You know, the Royal Marines was the best of the best as far as I was concerned. You know, I loved water. There was water involved, you know, sea soldiers and all that kind of thing. So I chased that. That was the best of the best. You know, I chased this image of something that I thought would make me happy, fulfilled, everything. And I got there and the image didn't suit the feeling. I didn't feel right. I didn't feel fulfilled. You know, I just felt that I wanted to be at war every day. That wasn't happening enough. I went to Northern Ireland initially, and then I went to Desert Storm in Iraq. So I saw action quite early on in my career, but still I was just like disillusioned when I came away from there.
It's a strange mindset that you want action. My dad actually said he enjoyed Northern Ireland the most because it could kick off at any moment. It was that kind of feeling of excitement. It's just for people in business sat behind a desk, they might not understand that kind of mindset. No,
there's a lot of people I talk to and they're like, you wanted to go to war? I was like, yeah, they can't understand it. They can't get their heads around it. But, you know, I kind of think now I look back now and I'm a different mindset. I'm like glad I did. You know, I see a lot of friends missing limbs, stuff like that. I see a lot of friends that have scars that you can't see mentally, and I'm glad that I didn't get exposed to something that really affected me in that way. You know, and unfortunately for me, I did join with childhood trauma, so I already joined with issues anyway. But you know, where I'm sat now, you know, I don't have mental health issues. I don't have any kind of physical, you know, injuries or anything like that. So I'm in a good place, and I'm glad that, you know, I'm glad for the experience I had because it made me. But you know, I don't have the longing to sit here and then go, I wish I'd seen more war. I absolutely don't. You know, I spent 6 years in Iraq as a civilian contractor, and that was the most hideous part of my life, to be quite honest. You know, it's there was more danger in being a civilian contractor than there was being in the special forces. So, you know, you've got no support. You're being attacked. We got attacked from time to time, and how we got out of those situations still amazes me to this day. But you know, that the time, and then people getting killed. You know, people that work for us being kidnapped and ransomed and all sorts of stuff. And it was a bad place to be for 6 years.
So many ex-military did do security in Iraq in that time, though, didn't they?
Natural thing to do, isn't it? You know, it's the one thing I said I wouldn't do. You know, I wanted to come out and I wanted to remap myself and do something totally different. There was no, you know, I wanted my own business. I wanted to create my own, you know, my own thing, so to speak. And the one thing I said that I was never going to do was go back to the military. But the trouble is, you know, it's like it kept clawing me back. You know, it wasn't military, but it was a contract. But the thing is, being in a war zone, you know, it really did. Although I said I didn't want that, the normality of everyday life was driving me absolutely insane. and I still was chasing the chaos. I was chasing the danger. So when I got back to Iraq, I was like, this is brilliant. I'm in a war zone. This is where I felt, I call it in one of my books, my first book, I think I've said it in the second book as well. I call it peace in war. And military will, a lot of people will relate, but definitely military will relate to that. We felt at peace in war. It was black and white. There was people that wanted to kill you. And if they tried, you were going to do whatever it took for that not to happen. But, and then you come home and you sit there. And you can imagine when you're in a war zone, it's big stuff. It's big picture stuff. It's the big cog. You come home and there's people moaning about trees hanging over fences. There's people moaning about cars being parked across their drive. And it's just this white noise of nothingness. And it drives you insane because you're like, Jesus, get a grip. When people don't have anything big in their life to focus on, they become a victim of their surroundings and a victim of their circumstances, and they get lost in that world. It's almost like they have to find something in that minuscule detail to have issues with. And that's what I find, I talk a lot in the book about that, about Battle Ready. You need a goal that overwhelms your circumstances, because if you don't have a goal that's bigger than your circumstances, you become a victim of your circumstances. And that's why people get bogged down in that.
So do you think then setting an next goal and chasing that goal and then breaking that into objectives to achieve that, do you think that's one of the most important parts of even civvy life or business life to achieve things?
Yeah, 100%. I'll say this, right? A lot of people think there's only certain people, a small percentage of people that have got goals. And yeah, they are right to some degree, because they're the people with goals that they have chosen. But let me tell you, if you haven't got a goal, your goals are what your dominant thoughts focus on.
Yeah.
Our subconscious is a goal-striving, go-getting machine. Okay, and when it focuses on your dominant thoughts, and will make sure you get what you think about. Yeah. That's fact. So if you're thinking negatively all day long, thinking about what could go wrong, thinking about, I wish, hating your circumstances, but wallowing in that hate of your circumstances, you'll just get a repeat cycle of that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's why, and the answer to your question is 100%. You need a goal that you can break down. First of all, that goal has got to scare you. I say a quote in the book, it's my quote, that nothing was ever great unless at some point you doubted your ability to achieve it.
Yeah.
So, that goal has to, again, the way we're wired, avoiding discomfort, avoiding failure, or the concept of failure, we only like to do the things that we know there's a good chance we're going to complete, we're going to accomplish. When it comes to doing something that we think, oh, well, I might not do that. I might, all of a sudden you don't want to look like a failure. You don't want to, be perceived as failing at any goal. And that's why we avoid doing stuff that is quite hard. A lot of people just steer away from anything that there's a chance they might fail at.
So was that you set a goal then when you were in the Marines that you wanted to be Special Forces? Is that because the reality of the Marines didn't quite quench the thirst that you had, or the perceived idea you had? So was that your next goal, was the SBS or Special Forces after the Marines?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I was going to leave. I got very disillusioned. At 23 years old, I was going to leave. I was about to leave. I had 6 months left of my 18-month notice. And that was it. I was like, this isn't enough for me. And then it was bumping into my officer from Desert Storm from Iraq that said to me, what are you doing? What are you up to? And I said, oh, I'm leaving, boss. And he said, no way. He says, please don't leave. He says, if you leave, he said, you will spend your life regretting that decision.
Yeah.
And he said, I believe you've got what it takes. I've seen something in you, and I believe you've got what it takes to be part of the Special Forces. And if it wasn't for him saying that, I wouldn't be sat here talking to you. I wouldn't. Bagsy Baker, if you're watching this, you're an absolute legend. If he'd not said that, I wouldn't have had the confidence. It gave me that little inch of confidence to just put in for selection and the belief that I could do this. If it wasn't for that, and that then pushed me through the whole of selection. Hearing him, in moments of doubt, hearing that echo going, I believe you've got what it takes.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And so the selection process is 6 months, isn't it?
Yeah, it's 6 months. Yeah.
And
so you start off, there was about 350 on our course, and then 6 months later, you do a land sort of hills phase, and then on to continuation training in the jungle for 6 weeks. And then once you've kind of got through those phases, a lot of the people that get to that point, there's a good chance they'll pass. You then go on to skills training, helicopter drills and all that kind of stuff, building assaults. And then the final test is the escape and evasion across the Brecon Beacon. So, and it's hideous. And then the very final test is resistance to interrogation, which was interesting.
Yeah. I've always wondered this, and even on the show, could you get a feel when you were going through selection, looking around, who you thought had what it took? Do you get a feel for people initially, or not?
You know what? This is an interesting question, because the answer to your question is no. We have a false perception of who might pass, and that's based on how they look physically. But you can get the guy, it's the same as me when I was on selection. The person that I doubted most out of all those 350 people that started was myself, because I was scrawny, I was skinny, I felt like a little boy, and I was surrounded by these men. I was one of the younger on the course, but I was surrounded by these men that looked like they should already be in the special forces.
Yeah.
And we falsely align with our perception, and perception is so wrong, especially when it comes to special forces selection, because there's so much about your mental robustness that contributes to whether you're going to pass or fail. So, you get the fittest people in the world, but when they've had sleep deprivation, when they've had food deprivation, when they've got the constant anxiety of not knowing how well they're doing, that combination creates a different kind of beast. And that's when the self-doubt starts coming in. And a lot of people on that course then, because of that self-doubt, they fail themselves.
Yeah. And
you can see how important that training is, because there's no one, from an early age, one thing that we thrive on, from the day you ran home and bought your first picture home, gave it to your mum, she stuck it on the fridge and she told everyone how brilliant you were because that was your picture. We thrive off external validation. We need it. It's like a drug. You know what I mean? And when we don't get that, we start doubting ourselves. But the thing is, with special forces selection, you don't get that. And it's the first time you can be the leader of the pack, best in a bunch, cross the line, and you're looking around like going, yeah, someone's going to pat me on the back in a minute and say, you're brilliant. And no one does. And you're like, oh shit, maybe I'm not as good as I think I am. And then it starts eating away, and you can understand why that happens, because there's no one in a war saying to you, hey, mate, that was a brilliant attack. The way you attacked the village and killed those people, that was brilliant. There's no one there. You've got to be self-motivated. You can't be there just waiting for external validation for you to have the confidence that you're doing a good job. So it's an interesting theory. But when you've got no one telling you you're doing well, it's yourself that will fail yourself.
Yeah, I'm often surprised when I watch the show, some of the, especially on the celebrities, because you've definitely got a preconceived idea about those guys. Some of the ones that really step up, and you think, I would never imagine that person to be that strong mentally, physically be able to do that or dig in. And then there's other ones where you're surprised and you just think you're looking for an excuse to pull out of this.
Yeah, and that happens on selection, mate. It's like when things are getting really tough. I mean, I did 2 selections. And my second selection, I bust my ankle in the early phases of a heels phase. They tried to take me off, and I was just like, I'm not coming back. If I don't do this time, I'm not coming back. They tried to take me off and said, come back in another 6 months. And I said, nah, I'm going to do it. So, I strapped up with, I put loads of strapping on, took a load of brufen, and I pretty much floated over the hills. but I was in tears, you know what I mean? And then you see people, they are looking for that physical ailment to basically smooth the path for their lack of mental robustness. Your mind will give up way before your body. Before.
I've heard Eddie Izzard say that. Eddie Izzard, he did back-to-back marathons. I don't know if you've seen that. I think he might have done 26 marathons.
He did, yeah,
days.
crazy. Yeah.
But he actually said that. I think that your brain's telling the body to shut down at 40% of its ability. Like you can go more than twice as far than you think you can.
Once we understand that there is more in the tank. And it's just this guy. I mean, you look, SAS Who Dares Wins, right? Katie Price was on there. Everyone knows Katie Price. And, 10 minutes after she gave in, she's like going, I can't believe I've just done that.
Oh, do you know what? I say that all the time. I've quit before. When we were kids, my mum and dad used to take us Thai boxing. And I remember quitting on my stall at the end of round 2.
Yeah.
And I felt like I couldn't go on. I was so tired. And honestly, that day was the day I realized that has had such an impact on my life since that point, because I never wanted to feel the disappointment of when I went into the changing rooms after that. Because literally, I sat down and I could have probably run 1,500 meters. I wasn't tired. I just gave up.
Yeah.
I just gave up, and it really affected me. And I've always said I'm never going to let that feeling happen again. But I know whenever I see him handing the number, I always think as soon as they go back off camera now, they're going to think, why have I done that?
Yeah, and you can see like that particular time Katie did that, the beasting only went on 5 minutes more.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So could she not even if she failed, even if she continued failing, that doesn't mean she's off.
Yeah.
Her determination would have pushed her through. And that's what I keep saying about Breakpoint. It's those moments we're talking about. It's pushing through those moments when everything around you is saying, give in, take the shortcut. It's about pushing through that short-term discomfort, because very quickly it's going to turn into, that's where the growth is. Yeah. Beyond that pain is where the growth is. And that's what we talk about on a consistent basis. When you come on the course, for instance, when you go on special forces, when you're in the military in general, you learn how to be hungry, you learn how to be tired, you learn how to be cold. But, as a civilian, unless you have got the will and the determination to be pushing yourself physically and mentally, just in that, as part of life, that when you get cold, there's a place to get warm. When you get hungry, there's a place to go and eat. When you get tired, you can go and sleep. And unless you actually push the bar on some physical activities or and stuff mentally, you just become far too comfortable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's why, a lot of people might be only putting in 30% effort, because they're just they're never used to stepping into discomfort. Never.
Yeah. So is that what you guys try and do on Breakpoint when you're taking corporates and businesses through these activities?
Yeah, I mean, we've got two different things. We do the corporate stuff, and the public stuff is quite different. When we've got the corporate stuff, I mean, very much so. We have one event that is absolutely horrible, and that's called Denied, and that's 36 hours of just absolute monotonous feastings, and that's really for sort of athletes. But anything that's not denied is not about any kind of beastings. We don't see the point of doing that. We put people through activities that push their sort of fears. A lot of people are scared of heights and stuff like that. So really, when it comes to doing Breakpoint, it's about stepping into the discomfort. Coming out of your comfort zone, because you can pretty much 9 times out of 10, the majority of people that come on the courses have never done anything like that before. And when you're put into a sort of uncomfortable surroundings, your thoughts, feelings, actions, and reactions become organic. They become raw. And it's the first time for a long time that you get a chance to actually look at your true character.
Yeah.
The problem with this world, and the problem with us in general, one of the problems, we have a lot of problems, but the problem is that we're so busy building this perception of who we want everyone else to think that we are, that the real us become a byproduct of that.
Yeah.
So, we're so focused. We will do anything to make the outside world think that our lives are this perfect picture.
Wow. Social media's got a lot to blame.
100%, 100%. And that when I went away, I went away and did ayahuasca in Costa Rica last year, and that was a massive. There's a lot of reflections and observations, and that was one of the major things. I'm in the public eye, and I was just seeing myself putting so much energy into this person I was creating for everyone else on the outside looking in, because everyone sort of labels. As soon as we are horrendous for labeling everything. It's like it's like people that come on that show, we label them all as celebrities. We're kind of forgetting that some of these people come from some phenomenal careers. But as soon as we label them a celebrity, the whole perception of them changes. They've got some blessed lifestyle and they don't really have to work that hard. which is rubbish anyway, because I know now, I hate to say it, but we are celebrities, and I've never worked so flipping hard. We're so happy to label people, put them into their box, and then and that's that, and then we have these perceptions of who they are, and it's wrong to do that. But we're so heavily invested in making creating this persona of who we're not, and it's okay to have that. But the thing is, you shouldn't be the byproduct. The real you shouldn't be the byproduct. The persona of what you're creating should be the byproduct.
Yeah.
And
it's like, I always say fame and celebrity should be a byproduct of being actually good at something. But now people chase fame and celebrity as I want that as a career. Well, what are you going to be famous for? You can be like a famous, I don't know, sports person. You can be a famous inventor.
Yeah.
Oh, I want to be famous. I just want to be on TV. It's a strange thing. Anyway, I think it's, I'm 36. I think I look at my kids and I think, they want to be YouTubers. That's like, we used to play army, obviously, because we lived on army base. We used to play war when we were kids. They play or sports all the time. They play pretending they're on YouTube.
Yeah.
It blows my mind, really.
How come you, I've got a question for you though.
Okay.
How come you never went in the military? And I'm not saying that's bad or not, Mike. I'm just saying, I'm just intrigued. You played army, you did that. It's like a natural thing for you to do, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. So, but boy, with the story. So I was born in Germany. We used to move every 2-3 years, as you know. I ended up actually lived in Bovington. I think you were down in Poolwood, you're not far. So by the Tank Museum, I moved age 7 back to Germany. I didn't like my new school, and I kept wanting to go back to the UK. So I kept pestering my mum and dad, can I go to boarding school? Can I go to boarding school? Can I go to boarding school? And eventually they relented. And it was there, I was kind of removed from the army lifestyle. I found that as I'd been away from the army and I was sort of going through university, and I was open to Iraq war was going on at the time when I was at university. I felt soldiers were expendable, and it was more government decisions, and they weren't treated with respect, or for want of a better phrase, they were cannon fodder for someone's political ideology that I didn't necessarily agree with. Now, I would have debates and arguments with my dad, not arguments, maybe a bit strong, but I would say, we're not in Iraq for weapons of mass destruction. This is about oil. This is money. They don't really care about collateral damage, how many lives we lose. They want to secure big contracts for big oil companies. And I think, similar to when I've read your book, and obviously you kept a lot of these thoughts to yourself, and you might not want to talk about it now, but I had that kind of mindset where I don't think I could swallow the narrative I was being given. I don't dismiss everything, but I just think there's something slightly underhand. So that's the reason why, really. I just think my exposure as a kid, nature, nurture.
Yeah.
So that's why I didn't join. And to be honest, I don't think I would have seen how my dad is. He got blown up in Northern Ireland. He was doing, he did 12 tours. Yeah, he still stayed loyal to them. And then towards the end, they kind of just get rid of you because it's a hierarchy. There's someone to step into your shoes as soon as you go, when you think you've given them 22 years, 30 years, 40 years of your life.
Yeah.
I just don't necessarily think it's an organization. Like you said, the reality and the perception, but it's a good career if you love that kind of stuff, I would say.
Yeah.
You might disagree with me. I don't know.
Yeah, no, but the thing is that, I'm totally with you on that. And like you made a reference to, I kind of uncovered a very similar thing on my first ever tour to Northern Ireland. And it was just like, it just came to me that I just felt that we were just being put on the ground as bait. There wasn't any, we were sold one narrative, which wasn't the truth. And some people might disagree with me, but I think there's a lot of truth in that. We were put on the ground as bait so that we would get attacked, and then they would be able to follow up and build the bigger intelligence picture. And
my dad said the same thing. He would say sometimes you knew exactly who the enemy was, but you were told you couldn't do anything to them. And then often, as obviously hindsight now with 25, 30 years down the line, they were all government informants, or they were all telling on each other anyway. So it kind of makes you think it's not a moralistic, we're the good guys, these are the bad guys, go and get the bad guys. It's more, well, those bad guys aren't as bad as these bad guys, so we'll cut a deal with them.
Yeah. There's all kinds going on.
It must be hard. What did you find was the worst parts of leaving? Because I know obviously there's a lot of depression, there's a lot of alcoholism, there's a lot of PTSD. with ex-military. Did you find that yourself, or what did you miss? Was it the camaraderie?
You know, I tell you what, the situation we're in at the moment, you know, with isolation and stuff, and people, if anyone wants to, some people this will resonate. Some people want to understand what it's like living in the military. It's similar to what people are going through at the moment. The scaffolding of your everyday falls apart. There's no framework in your everyday. You know, you're not in close contact with the people around you that support you, and you feel isolated and lonely, and there's a massive void in your life missing. That is very much like leaving the military. And it's really, you know, for me, when I left, I was like, I've achieved the best in the military. I'm going to go out. I've never really had much exposure in the civilian world. And I just thought, you know, I can sort of carbon copy my expertise in one field and just change it to any habit in my life, and I'll just be an instant success. And I felt invincible behind the wire. But when I got on the other side of the wire, that's when everything started to fall apart. You know, the camaraderie, I took that for granted. And then all of a sudden, your mates weren't there. They were gone. You know what I mean? It's like, there was a massive void. And that's when I started to spiral out. And then loss of purpose. You have a massive loss of purpose. And people don't understand really the importance of purpose. We're all driven by purpose. We have to have a purpose. That makes us, you know, it creates focus, it creates drive in our lives. And when we don't have that, you know, like a lot of people with addictions, and whether that's alcohol or drugs, it's not to say they're not losers. A lot, you know, it's the fact that they're lost. They're absolutely lost, and they've got no direction, no purpose. And when you've got that you end up in a flat spin of nothing. And that was really, I was jumping around trying to find my purpose. And, you know, I was deteriorating quite fast, not fast. Actually, over a period of 10 years, I started drinking a hell of a lot more. You know, when you're in the military, you work hard, but then you play hard. And I took that lifestyle. I took that sort of ethos with me onto civilian street, and there was less of the work hard, and there was a lot of the play hard.
Is that because you didn't have the structure around you then?
I didn't have any structure, and I didn't have, you know, I was trying to create something. I didn't know where my focus lay. I was driven by cash, you know, and this is a big mistake, you know, which I've learned now. I was a slave to money. I was driven. My focus with everything was, I'll start this and but I'll start that because it's going to create X, Y, Z of cash. That was the focus. And now I realize that for you to be actually fulfilled, and for you to prosper and to do well, you've got to do something that drives you. You're passionate about it.
Yeah.
And that once you look at something that way, you're passionate about that. Again, the money becomes a byproduct. The money is a tool for you to help you, to assist you. And once you change that dynamic of not being a slave, it's once you let anything overconsume you. You know, it's like alcohol, it's like money, sex, whatever it is. If you lose control of it, it's you're its bitch.
Yeah.
And I was definitely money's bitch, alcohol's bitch, you know, all kinds of bad habits. And that was it took me a long time to get through that. When I came back in 2014, 2015, I actually came back. Let's go back before that. 2011, I ended up, you know, I'd come out of Iraq. You know, I didn't want that. You know, there's a lot of issues, mental health issues and stuff going on. Being in a war zone for that long is just not good anyway. And then coming back, I then went over to Southeast Asia, and we were busting kids out of child prostitution and slavery rings. And that was when I really understood my purpose. The power of helping other people was amazing. Unfortunately, the whole thing collapsed. You know, there was a massive political issue. We then had to escape out of Thailand, and my whole world had fallen apart. You know, I'd used my money from Iraq to pay for that. It was all self-funded. But
so that purely was motivated by purpose and helping other people then.
Exactly, yeah. Because I couldn't get my head around the fact these kids are sold by their families. 1.6 million a year, and there's probably a lot more than that. You know, we complain about our parents not being as affectionate as they could have been, when these kids are being sold by their families, knowing that they're going into to be prostitutes. And and slaves in factories and stuff. I couldn't get my head around it. So I was driven by that, to be a part of that, to prevent that from happening, changing the destiny of these kids' life. And if I just changed one person's life, one kid's life, that would have been enough. But, you know, it had such a massive effect on me. And it was the first time I felt complete, felt so fulfilled. It was an amazing feeling. And that's really, although it ended abruptly, and I came back and I hit rock bottom. I had no money. I'd invested everything thinking that was going to be my new life moving forward. I'd be, you know, doing this in various countries all over the world. It just fell apart and I was left with nothing. But the one thing I took from that is something that money can't buy, and that's understanding my purpose.
So would you say that was the first time you were genuinely happy with the work you were doing in your career?
Yeah, 100%. It was the first time where I actually felt this really means something to me. And, you know, this was like, joining the military, joining the special forces was great, but a lot of it was because I was doing it for how it looked and how it was perceived by the outside.
Well, that's someone else's dream, isn't it? I often say that.
Yeah.
We get opportunities. We've got one at the moment with possibly taking some of the stuff that we do on YouTube and turn it into a TV series.
Yeah.
And I'm not that excited about it. It doesn't really appeal to me. But then there's part of me that thinks, oh, but someone else's dream would be to have a TV show. So should I just do it anyway? Because to be honest, we're not going to do it. You almost feel like I'm lying to myself. It's not going to make me happy. So the answer is no, really. But you try and convince yourself. It seems, reading your books, your whole career has been trying to find that thing, and you'd achieve what some people would love to join the Marines. That's their ultimate goal. You did that. Then some people would like to join Special Forces. You did that, but you hadn't really achieved or found that inner peace.
Yeah, because you're right though. It was a lot of that. Not 100% of that wasn't for me. It was the outside world. It was because it was the perception of it was a dream, but it didn't mean it was my perception. Didn't mean it was going to complete me. So really, and that's why, you know, people talk about why goals fail. You know, that's one of the biggest reasons, because the goal's not yours.
So how did you end up on TV then? So you come back from Thailand. You wanted to set up your own business. And it was with Foxy, wasn't it, that you set up? Yeah,
I've not seen Foxy for a long time. I've not seen, you know, I knew Foxy when we served together in the Special Forces in the SBS. And I came back. I said I'd never come back to the UK. There was too much, you know, broken marriages or marriage. And there was a lot of, again, I was in love. I was living in Australia at the time. And, you know, again, I was in love with, you know, I had this, I was out there and I was like, I thought I should love this. You know, there's like white sands and blue seas and blue, always hot. And I was in love with the perception. And I thought, you know, this should be the perfect lifestyle, but it wasn't. I wasn't happy out there. You know, and then all of it, and I said I'd never come back to the UK. And then all of a sudden, for some reason, I opened up the floodgates of opportunity back here in the UK, and it just all made sense. Came back to the UK with pretty much nothing, and that's really where this, you know, where the book, where that stemmed from, is when I came back in 2014. I'd fallen to such a great, from such a great height, and it was my confusion, right, at how I'd gone from hero to zero. And I was like, what happened? What happened to me? I knew I was capable of great things, but why could I never achieve it? You know, why was I just in this same old repeat habit loop? And it was that, and the good thing about knowing that I'd done something so great at Special Forces is that gave me the benchmark. I knew I'd done it before, so I knew I could do it again. But I knew I needed to make some changes in my life. And the only way to do that was to change the blueprint, to change the subconscious, and stop that repeat habit loop of a destructive lifestyle.
What were the sort of the key things that you did to make that change?
Well, I put myself, that's the beauty of this book and why it's so apparent at the moment, is because I put myself into self-isolation. I didn't want anything, no distractions from the outside world. I put myself through a rigorous and disciplined program of mind, body, and nutrition. Okay. Although I hadn't stopped drinking then, I cut away a lot of the drinking, which I knew was affecting my productivity and my creativity. I'm a creative person. I like to invent things, but I've never had, when it gets to doing the hard, and this comes back to everything I talk about, when it came to going through the discomfort of having to do spreadsheets, having to do proposals, having to do the things I wasn't comfortable with, I'd steer away and avoid it. So really, it was about putting it in a process. I started off by cutting out the alcohol. I used to get up every morning, and I still do this practice to this day. Up at 5 o'clock. Okay, I then go downstairs. I meditate for 30 minutes, and my meditation is my focused attention at my intention. So that is the things I want to focus on, and it's mainly the things about being able to clear your mind, because while that mind chat is going on, and we have 70,000 to 100 thoughts go around our head every day, it's about choosing to focus on the things that you're passionate about, and not allowing just this mess of mind chatter just to confuse you all day long. So really, meditation for me is about just clearing your head. Once I've done that, the gym or a run, once I've done that, I sit in front of my computer, not all the time, and I basically, between the hours of 7 and 8, I can power through a load of stuff without my phone going off, without people hassling me. And it's, for me, from that time from 5 till 8 o'clock is absolute power. And it sets me up for the day. The day doesn't come to me. I take myself to the day, and I hit hard. Okay. And I think a lot of people, if you're so used to snooze button, snooze button, snooze button, your life and the decisions you make will be based on the snooze button.
You're snoozing your way through life, aren't you?
Yeah.
You are a zombie.
Do it later, do it later, do it later. No one's there to give you that time back. So all this do it later, that do it later mindset will get you nowhere apart from depression, a lack of self-worth, and not achieving much in life. And, at the end of the day, some people say, I'm happy where I am in life. I just feel that we should always be looking to improve. Every day should be an improvement on the last day. That's the way I look at it anyway. And, to have that in your life, that's a lot of people wonder why they're depressed, wonder why they just feel flat. They've got nothing there's nothing driving them.
Yeah. Do you think lockdown then is the perfect opportunity for a lot of people to try and put some of this into action? Because I like say meditation, it's something I've always thought sounds a bit woo-woo to me. And I can imagine a lot of the special forces boys would have said the same thing if you'd mentioned meditation.
100%, mate, because the perception of it. During those years, I'd have said the same thing. Foxy comes up with a funny thing, right? Says to me, he says, the old Ollie would have filled the new Ollie in.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, a lot of this stuff, like, if I'd have said to myself, I'm meditating, I'd been like, what? But
that's growth, isn't it? That's personal growth. Like, you're not the same person 20 years ago that you're going to be today. It's experience and, like,
100%.
Youth's wasted on the young. Imagine if you could have spoke to your old self, you wouldn't have listened to you. That's the crazy thing.
Yeah, that is, and I talk about that a lot. It's like a lot of people talk about, how, I say to people, there weren't the mechanism in place when I left the military to go through a process that would help you in your transition and mental health and stuff. And even if there was, I'd have done everything in my power to make an excuse or find a way not to do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The student has got to be ready. If the student's not ready, it's not absorbed. It's just either lip service or you don't bother attending. So really, for me, about meditation and stuff like that, I've become spiritual. I'm quite empowered to say that, because I do believe we are part of something a lot bigger. I've had experience in my life that confirmed that to me, and also the fact, that. I'm driven by the fact that there's a program going on here, and this again relates to Breakpoint. I don't listen to the program; I follow my heart with everything now. Yeah. And once you follow the heart, it disengages the program, because this can be influenced, it can be corrupted. So listening to this too much doesn't have a good, can be detrimental to your progress.
Yeah, well, you're your own worst enemy, I often say.
Yeah, no, you are 100%, and people have. We've almost been programmed to listen to this only and not follow our hearts.
Yeah, I really liked in that. So my dad would tell us what he was going to tell us, and then tell us what he's just told us. He had this like system in place. He'd repeat himself 3 times, so we were very clear. Yeah. But we were big on mission statements and anything that we did as a family, even debriefs. Even if we had the best holiday ever, my dad would nitpick on things that could have been improved. I could have put a gas bottle on better. So do you think they're essential things for people in real life as well?
Yeah, I do think, there's a level. I mean, it can sound quite militarized, and it's a lot of stuff we do. It's similar to what we do with the corporates. Now, when we do our corporate training, you can't militarize a corporate entity. You just can't do it. It just won't work. But the reason we came up with the concept of Breakpoint and working with the corporates is there is nuggets you can take from the special forces life, or the special forces mental mindset, and also the processes. You can put some of those things into a corporate structure which really benefit that structure. So we have simple things like anything that you want to look at doing, you have to go through, and I'll tell you what, to simply explain, it's all about process, because until you learn a process, the thoughts alone will not get you there. Everyone knows that if you want to achieve something, you've got to put a process into play that is void of what this says up here. So really that's what we do with the corporates. When it comes to a project, we've got like a system. It's plan, brief, deliver, debrief. Okay, so you go through a process, and the debrief is so important. I think a lot of people, when we're dealing with corporates, especially, it's either when after a big project, the first thing we did after a mission, you come off the helicopter, you go straight into a hot debrief, and that's hot because you still everything's fresh. That's where you learn everything. So every time you do a new project, it's not like your first rodeo. You know what I mean? You've got intelligence, you've got information from people that have done it before. So that's really important. Debriefing is really important. And I think, and mission statements, a lot of these tools that we talk about, businesses do adopt. They get an external trainer in, and people will adopt these processes for the business. Yeah. I don't understand why they don't use them for the personal life. You know what I mean? Use them for your personal life. It's like, if you put some of these processes into your personal life, have a personal mission statement. A lot of companies come up with these great mission statements. They're for the company. They're not going to fill you with passion. You know what I mean? So you have, like for me, coming up with a mission statement for my business, create globally identified brands recognized for the positive growth and development of others. That for me, right, might not to you, but that for me creates me with, that fills me with passion. Yeah. Right? That makes me understand that when I get out of bed, it's not just to pay the bills. It's not to pay for the finance in the car, house, or whatever. That is my driving force. So having mission statements and also having the process into play when you want to achieve anything, goal setting, the whole lot, is so important.
Where does this fit in with the TV stuff then? So you ended up on TV. Yeah. Is that doing what you do in the corporate, with Breakpoint, your own business? Is that doing that just on TV?
The TV stuff came about, I put myself into that boot camp, that mindset boot camp. Me and Foxy had already come up with the idea of Breakpoint, which was taking civilians and the corporate world, putting them through a selection type process, and using our experience and expertise to show them different ways of thinking about things, pushing their limitations. So we'd come up with that idea, and we were putting things into play, and all the time, whether you believe this or not, right? Every day I sat in that house and I meditated, although I had no belief in it at that time, really, I was prepared to do anything. I meditated, I did all kinds of processes. One of the things I was focusing on all the time is, because I had this idea of Breakpoint, was I'm going to sit there and I was visualizing. While I was meditating about me and Foxy being on a stage, helping all these people and being the focus of a massive audience, and being on stage and talking about our past experiences, etc., etc. And I visualized and focused on that every day. And that was really, how I was seeing Breakpoint moving forward. Now it's getting like into the second month of that process. People around me were starting to say, "What are you doing?" I was running out of money. Everyone knows that, setting up a business takes money. You've got websites, you've got marketing, you've got all kinds of stuff. So I was running out of money, and my family was saying to me, "What are you doing, Matt? You need to, why don't you go back to your old, go back, do some security work. There's good money in that, blah, 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 blah." And I was like, no, this is going to work. This is going to work. Although there was that little seed of doubt was starting, because I was at the end of my tether. I was like thinking, I was doing all this mindfulness practice, all this visualization, all this stuff, and there was nothing coming to me. And I was like sitting there going, please just give me a sign that this stuff is worth my time. And then all of a sudden I get a phone call from Foxy. He sat with a production company and he said, you know that idea we got for Breakpoint? Do you want to do that on TV? And I'm like, shut up. I thought he was in, I actually thought he was in the pub, and I'm like, I can remember now. I can remember exactly where I was when I got that phone call, and I was like, "Wow, no!" It's like I've been visualizing about me and Foxy being on a big stage. That was the start of a very big stage.
Yeah, it's massive, isn't it? I was going to ask you about so our sound engineer is called Latch, and he is your biggest fan. We would normally film these in our studio. He said to me 3 months ago, if you could get Ollie Ollerton on, that would be his absolute dream guest. He's fuming and disappointed that we're not doing this in person. But we normally do a section where we ask questions from Latch, and his are mainly around the TV show. So,
question from
My question is this.
I was going to ask you some of these questions. That's right. Quick fire ones.
Yeah.
So I've got looking at selection on the TV version. I'm sure on some level when you first meet candidates, your brain quickly comes down on one side of the argument. Do I think this person has what it takes? Are you ever completely surprised by a candidate?
Mate, I'm surprised by so many of them. I mean, because it's fresh in my head at the moment, the celebrity version at the moment. I mean, massively surprised. You got Lauren Steadman on there. She got one arm.
Yeah.
Never in a million years did I think we'd have someone with one arm on the show. So there's that. You got Anthea Turner. I felt so guilty. You know what I mean? We should be taking her for a cream tea and having a chat. And she's like, so yeah, absolutely. That, we get constantly surprised because you cannot look at someone and go, they're going to pass or fail.
Yeah, Joey Essex has surprised me on this.
Amazing, mate.
Because
amazing.
I know it's a strange thing. You've got this misconception, and also, but he's quite strong. And also, that he gets some jip, but he just keeps it to himself and he cracks on. So.
Yeah, he's brilliant. No, he's the lad's favourite.
And I'm a boxing fan, so I was expecting more from Tony Bellew. Yeah.
Wow.
So I'm an Everton fan as well. So so I've seen him fight a few times live, but
got a lot of time.
Surprised me really. Yeah, being a sportsman.
Yeah.
I thought, he's going to blow everyone away, but I've been surprised at how some of the others have got a similar kind of mindset as well. Really.
Yeah. No, Tony's left the fight, mate, but the fight's not left in yet.
Yeah, well, that's being a scouser. That'll be with him till the end. I've got watching the program. You all mentioned in your criteria you're looking for someone that you could go on patrol with. How important is chemistry within a group or units?
Yeah, there always has to be a level of chemistry, but the thing is, it's not the case that because you're in a special forces team that you're best friends with everyone. That's irrelevant. The beauty of a special forces team is when it comes to a mission, personal difference, everything gets pushed to one side. And there is a professional chemistry that takes over. When I look back to some of the things that we did, it was absolutely friggin' amazing. The non-verbal communication, it was almost like telepathy, mate. You're diving into a target as a four-man team, subsurface, as an SBS team, you're going off compass, and just the way you moved fluid to a target and able to get onto that target, whether that's a ship or whatever, and then just moving around. No, not even talking, not even through comms, not even talking. It was amazing to be part of that, and something I took for granted at the time. But when I look back, that fluid, that was just amazing.
Sounds like top level sport. Yeah. Like Man City, if you look at all their players, I always use them as an example of a team that works. They all know exactly what their roles are. They probably don't get on with each other off the pitch.
No, exactly. But their mission, but that comes down to the fact that their goal overwhelms their circumstances, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That their goal is much greater than their little personal petty arguments.
Yeah.
So they all want to achieve that. So they become irrelevant. And when you haven't got a goal that's greater than your circumstances, that's when you allow little bickering arguments and that's a lot of the problem with corporates as well.
Next one I've got. As the Channel 4 thing was yours and Foxy's baby, all the other guys seem to get more camera time. Is that your choice? Does it bother you, or is it just the way it's played out?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. It's just the way it's played out, really. But when we were actually filming, it's quite funny watching the dynamic. It is for me anyway, because to be quite honest, if I wanted a bit more camera time, I should probably fight a little bit more. When they come, when we're actually filming, we're in it's very ad hoc. It's not super scripted. You'll be there. You'll do this. You know, basically the production come in, and at one point we're in our accommodation or whatever, and they say, right, such and such needs doing, and you know, everyone apart from me really, I see they're all fighting to get, and I'm like, I haven't
noticed you did the rope, didn't you?
But mate, that for me, actions speak louder than words. When it comes to the stunts and all that kind of stuff, I'm like, I'll do that, because as far as I'm concerned, that beats any kind of verbal part of the show.
Yeah. I actually wanted, when that was put together, it was I watched that yesterday, and I was thinking, did you do that in one take, or was that put together? So did you?
That was one, mate, because I wasn't doing that again. I tell you what, that was horrible. That was horrible, and it wasn't horrible because I was scared, because I knew all the safety was in place and all that. You know, it was horrible because I was so in fear of failing. You know, you got all these people watching you, and I knew it was a one-take hit as well. Yeah. Because that expanse of traverse is hard work. And also, when you're doing a regain, it requires a little bit of bounce on the rope to really make it easier. There was no bounce on that rope. It was, you know, so yeah, I was absolutely bricking it because I didn't want to fail in front of.
Well, I was thinking the pressure there, especially because you're about to send, like, say if you've done that in 3 stages or it took 3 takes, then their argument would be, well, you've not managed to do it in 1 take either. Yeah. So you're under a lot of pressure to perform.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, Foxy's done South America, Answer's done Everest. Have you got any big challenges you'd still like to do, or are you happy for now with Breakpoint and the TV show?
My focus about everything, you know, that as far as I'm concerned, my primary is Breakpoint, and also we've got another company called Battle Ready, which is a fitness app. They're my focus, all right? The TV show supports that.
Yeah.
Now, I did Mont Blanc last year, which was a bit of a luxury, but I haven't got the time to go away, start doing these things and lead my business. It's at the stage where it needs me around 24/7.
So you're a businessman that's on TV. Like, really, you're a businessman first now.
100%.
I was going to ask you, so I get the impression, or I've got this idea, that a lot of ex-Special Forces maybe wouldn't like you guys being on there. Do you get shit or hassle from those guys, or because a lot of them like to remain anonymous and stuff like that?
Yeah, in every walk of life, you're going to get your haters, aren't you?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But on the whole, everyone likes the show. They love it. They see we're not selling. There's no secrets on there whatsoever. Yeah. Everything is in the public domain, and everything that we do is basically about the cycle. It's about the candidates. It's not really about us so much. I mean, we have to go through stringent measures to make sure. I mean, we sign an agreement that we wouldn't disclose information anyway, so we can't do that. But yeah, there are people that hate it, but I just put that down to jealousy.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you've gone on to do something bigger and better.
Yeah.
But yeah, then you probably even imagined yourself at some point. And then the quick fire ones are Ray Mears or Bear Grylls?
Bear Grylls.
City Break or Country Retreat?
Country.
Carrot or stick?
Stick.
Oh, I thought you'd say both. I thought you'd bottle that one. And then SBS or Navy SEALs?
SBS.